So there's a lot of you brought up a lot of things already that we can talk about and practice and how the Dharma is held in the West today, the causes and conditions, um, and how that lends itself to weaponizing the Dharma or misunderstanding the Dharma to serve power. And I think that's really a lot of what's going on. Um, and how tone or the taboo of anger or um, even the inflection of passionate speak really is so um, so not allowed, really, to the point where, you know, um, the tone is more important than the content. And um, that is just another way of of weaponizing the Dharma to suppress urgent, morally urgent um, expression. You know, as we talk about anger, what is the difference? Like when you feel your integrity has been violated, you know, um, just by bearing witness to what's happening, right? Like what is principled moral outrage, right? Like where does that come into play, right? And and power, you know, and power. So we can talk more and more about Zen practice and about what is the direct experience of your meditation and what you insights into the process and into the insights of um, slowly taking apart the ego, right? And what is arising at these stages and moments in your practice, right? So we can sort of get into a lot of that thing too. But I also just wanted to really start this off with acknowledgement, really, and a sort of a dedication. So I just wanted to do that first. We jumped right in, but I just want to say that so many people have let me know that they are suffering the silence of their Buddhist teachers, suffering the blocking from their Sangha members that will not let this conversation happen, that they're feeling a sort of moral woundedness, an abandonment, a kind of a spiritual betrayal from their teachers and their communities. Dependent origination. I am not me alone, right? We are this together. And to feel violated by that community for clear moral principle is really wounding. And I hear the pain. People write to me a lot and tell me about how they're suffering. So I wanted to say that I'm only here showing up for you, that this conversation today is for you, and that I see you, and that I hear you, and that I'm suffering this too with you. And so, and so, you know, I wanted to set that off straight away with setting the intentions of this conversation. And the intentions are to hear you and to bear witness to what's happening inside of us and outside of us and all around us, and how it's been affecting us for the last 19 months. And and the outrage and the heartbreak around it. So but no, especially, I could get hot sometimes, and know that I'm holding my heartbreak in those moments, and that is how it should be heard. Okay, so.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you. I saw Doreen raised her hand. No, not anymore? Okay. Is there anyone else? Let's see, no. Yeah, well, maybe I have a question. Yeah, what about the silence? We were talking about this a lot, the three of us. What kinds of fear or conditioning do you think are operating beneath that silence? Especially among teachers or leaders, but not only.
Is this a question for me, Joyce, or is it an open
Maybe
question?
you can answer it, or maybe there's someone else who can join in.
Well, I see, I mean, I'll just say, like, I see a lot of things at play in that silence. And I see a willful silence, a demand for silence from positions of power. And I see a fearful silence about retribution and threat and coercion in that silence. And I see cowardice, just plain cowardice. But if you behind the scenes talk to people, people have confessed really to me that funders are threatening teachers. Teachers are students are demanding that teachers stay silent. Teachers are unwilling to put themselves in a vulnerable position of losing. We have to talk about money in Buddhism too, right? And you're running retreats, and you have staff, and you have a lot of board members, and there's power, and the power at play is saying you're not allowed to say anything controversial, or you can talk about the environment and you can criticize Trump, but this is a no zone, and if you do it, there'll be repercussions, believe me. And so we have to do an analysis of power and money, power and money in Buddhism. And I don't know how it's going down over there in Europe, but I could see what's happening here, and people are contacting me here and telling me what's going on. So that's a lot of what I see in the silence.
Mm.
And as was mentioned, the easy weaponization of Buddhists' sayings in order to maintain that silence as a sort of oppressive factor,
Can you clarify this a bit more? This weaponizing of Buddhist teachings. This is
Yeah. Well, like Dirk just said, like, oh, we can't choose sides, we can't lay blame, we can't, no one is pure, no one is innocent, no one is, we're all suffering, and it's like who you have to ask yourself, who is benefiting from this statement,
Mm.
you know, and that's what I mean by, or there's lots of aspects of Buddhist practice that can can easily be manipulated as we're talking about. So we have to have the other component of critical discernment and deep understanding of the Dharma to balance out when things like this are said. And this is part of the failure of the boomer generation Buddhist teachers. And yeah, I'm going to touch into that. I'm heartbroken about it. I'm heartbroken about it because a lot of these people were my sort of go-to people as I was growing up through the Dharma. And to see them misusing or manipulating the Dharma in the way that they have, or even just the silence, broke my heart, really. And to see it in Sangha members, um, yeah, we're all somewhere and we're all sort of trying to wade through this, right? Trying to draw up what we know of the Dharma. And then you see consciously or unconsciously misuse or misunderstanding to the effect of silencing the moral voice that's bubbling up in the Sangha,
Mm.
and the sort of almost, I would even say, punishment of those Sangha members. The sometimes banishing. I would say I know a practitioner who was asked to leave the Sangha because she was so upset around not only the humanitarian crimes that were happening, but the demand not that the from the teachers in Sangha, the demand that it not be discussed and challenged and scrutinized. So critical discernment really has been neutered in contemporary Buddhism. And so that's something also that's been weighing in my heart mind a lot lately.
Mm.
I see a hand up.
Yes, Linda, please unmute yourself. Yeah. Dirk, kan jij?
Yeah, I just ask you
Ja.
to. Yeah, now you
Okay,
should be
now
able
I
to.
can. There
Yeah.
was a
Okay, great.
moment when it said the host wouldn't let me. So thank you, host, for letting me. Yeah, Eric and I know each other, and I'm out here in California, and I deeply value and love Eric. We haven't ever met in person, but I still get to love him. So of course, we both know that we're both very deeply engaged in these matters. So I could respond to several things, but at the moment, what I would like to say is I've heard you make these dark references, and I don't doubt at all that you're talking about conversations you have had uh, with people, but they're all sounding kind of dark. And are we naming names here? Are we saying I spoke to the teacher of my sangha who said we can't talk about this? Or it's worried me ever since you've been talking about this. Like, let's name names. Let's have out in the open conversations. What do you think, Eric?
I appreciate that transparency, Linda. But people spoke to me under conditions, and that would be outing them without their consent. So I can't violate that. Um, I so how to qualify that? So um, hmm, I don't know how to qualify that without um, violating confidentiality. So you can, I guess maybe the middle path could be you can hold that with with um with open doubt or with you know, being unconfirmed, because I certainly am not going to get people in trouble, because people get in trouble around this topic.
Thank you, Eric.
But I just also want to say that Linda and Bhikkhu Bodhi are my two go-to people, that when I write something, I'll send it to one of them. And over the last year and a half, Linda has been invaluable to giving feedback to my writing, and Bhikkhu Bodhi. And maybe, you know, I have an inner sanctum of three fiercely um, intelligent and fiercely compassionate Dharma friends, and they hold me to account. They challenge me, and they tell me when I'm wrong, and they support me where I need it. So I just wanted to say, um, you need people like Linda to sharpen your sword.
Thank you. Irene, can you unmute? Yes.
Hi, thank you all so much for holding this Liberation Circle. I am also a friend of Eric's. Thank you, Eric, so much for being here. And I keep hearing that we're all here for this and this topic and this thing. And how is it that we are even in this circle where we've all agreed that we're going to talk about this genocide, that we're not naming the starving of men, women, and children, that we're not naming the bombing of water facilities and hospitals, that we have the highest number of child amputees? Eric, how does silence and genocide, how do these things work, and how even unconsciously are we all agree to it?
So there you have it, right? So there you have this fiercely honest voice, this voice of critical analysis that comes in to say, hey, this is missing. You know, I just want to honor that. I want to honor you, and I want to you know, like say, like we need to say the words, like it's part of the problem, right? That this genocide is some of the most cruel examples of barbarism that I've witnessed in my life, and I've dedicated a large part of my life to genocide. So thank you. I mean, I'm certainly here to talk about that genocide. But I'm here also to talk about how it's affecting us as Buddhist students, right? So that's, how did not hearing those words for the first 30 minutes of this talk feel inside, and the pain that brings up. So I don't know. Yeah.
What
We
I
need, yeah, we need
sorry.
to, part of the things, when I was trying to engage with sanghas and teachers, that there's a whole list of words that you can't say, right? You can't say genocide, you can't say ceasefire, you can't say refugees, you can't say um, you know, Palestine, right? Like there's a whole list that the New York Times was issued that they weren't allowed to say. So yeah, I got a lot of pushback saying we can't name the perpetrators. We can't, right? We can't name the crime. And a lot of the conversation to try to derail conversations were around those things. So just for the record, genocide of the Palestinian people by Israel, by the is criminal by all standards.
Mm.
What I would also like to add here is some kind of what you see happening I see it especially happening in the Netherlands, is that you see in the Buddhist world is that you see Zen teachers, for example, stepping up and they say, well, we do talk about it. I mean, we talk about peace and we have the dough for peace here. And we're sitting outside and we're meditating for peace, real peace. And that's also so that's almost for me it's close to scary. I mean, it's completely talking around it, not mentioning indeed the word Israel, not mentioning genocide. And the longer we're also keeping each other in this vacuum, the scarier it becomes, it's and also the last thing I just want to add shortly, I also think that all the propaganda which is being constantly communicated also via a lot of mainstream Western media is still, whether you want it or not, it's getting under our skin, and you also see it in the Buddhist world. You also see these elements coming out. Why it's complicated or whatever. All the buts and everything are also you see them within the Buddhist world. It's painful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think good that you brought it up, Irene. Thank you. Thank you. There's a question of Alexandra. She already said some things in the chat, so I want to give response.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Eric. It's good to see you all. Irene's question sort of brought up for me this place where I'm feeling a lot of pain, which is my own continued failure to truly meet this moment. I have done things, I've gotten arrested, I write publicly about it, I challenge sanghas, so I don't do anything, but I would, out of the context of this situation, I would like to think of myself as somebody who, if a person were pointing a gun at a child in front of me, I would step in front of that gun and risk my life to stop that. And I'm not doing that. I say what I think, but I don't risk my livelihood. When I protest and when I get arrested, I know I'm safe. I don't really think that I'm going to be harmed or threatened. I was pregnant over this period and I stopped putting my body on the line while pregnant women in Gaza were starving to death, or their children were being cut out of their wombs with no, pain medicine. So I guess the question is, even those of us who are trying to push back, how do we practice with the fact that we aren't, how do I practice with the fact that I'm not taking the risks to myself that I wish I had the courage to take? How do I have compassion for myself and also challenge myself every day to be more courageous? And also be with the tension of that fact that I have not truly done what I would like to think that I am the kind of person who would do in the face of such direct, horrifying atrocities against so many innocent people.
Beautiful question. Thank you, Alexandra. Do you want Eric to respond? Will you, Eric?
Sure. I mean, I'm a dad too, right? And the honesty of that question and the pain of that question is very moving. And I have in my heart mind right now how I've been railing against people who have said to me during this crisis, like, I'm gonna, we can't forget about self-care. And so I'm just going to, contradict myself sometimes to say, like, it's not, you have to take care of your family, you have to take care of yourself, as an expression of care for the world. I think that, a lot of the, my longer conversations with Bhikkhu Bodhi, it's like, somebody said the other day, we have to stop thinking as separate people. Like, I personally see everything that you are doing, Alexandra, and like that, those waves go out into the world. And they have affected a lot of people, right? There's impact there. And without destroying the vessel, right? Because that doesn't serve. So the ego, right? So the ego is at play in all different kinds of ways. And that's really been a big part of the way I've been looking at this. And how has the ego been interfering? And it's a slippery little snake, and it slips in. And the ego mind comes in and says, you're not doing enough. Look at you. You're pathetic. You don't even deserve the air you're breathing, right? But we sit in meditation and we start to distance ourselves a little bit from that ego mind, and we start to witness it. We start to recognize it and know its tricks, and it's at play, and it sneaks in when it, it's clever. And I hear it over and over and over. I hear it so many ways. And so I feel it. I feel this conflict of compassion, and then that inner speak of you're not doing enough. So I was thinking, how distant can it be, right? Like a Tibetan nun in a cave in Tibet could be meditating and sending out prayers for us right now. And that has an effect, right? That is having an effect. I know it is. So, so there's that.
Thank you. I just want to check in with my colleagues. Do we continue the conversation, or do we go into breakout rooms?
I would suggest to go to breakout rooms, but before we do this, I think it's really important to shortly answer the question of Tom. He says, I suggest this idea, Israel, also the Israeli people, and I have friends there who are certainly not committing this genocide, rather say state of Israel or the Israeli government instead of Israel. I think we can all agree to this. I think it's also when we talk about this topic, then of course we don't mean all the Israeli people. Same thing as that we don't talk about the Jews or whatever. We talk about the state of Israel who's committing these crimes, these horrible crimes. So thank you for sharing this suggestion.
And it's inspiring to see the recent protest marches happening in Israel. So praise
Sure.
and thanks.
So, Doreen, shall we move on then?
Yeah, sure. And perhaps Eric would like to guide us into a short meditation together before we join in breakout rooms. How's that, Eric?
Okay. I could do that. It seemed that maybe we should have done that to kick off, but let's do it anyway because I get filled up with emotions and thoughts, and so it's good to take a break and settle down.
Mhm.
You know, so let's just do a quick drop-in meditation. If you can, a fully erect spine, head on the string to the ceiling, shoulders back, rooted down, and then one huge in-breath and a big exhale. And then an in-breath. And then we can start breathing regularly, moving that energy from our chest down into our bellies. Our chest and head is light. Our hips and legs are heavy. And all of these thoughts and all of these emotions are just settling down. Like the mud puddle settling. The word in Japanese is unsui, right? Mud puddle. We're just letting the dirt settle to the bottom. For me, it's more like a snow globe because there's so much swirling around in there. Sometimes, in order to combat drowsiness in this, I make the water a little bit cold to keep my attention sharp as this mud is starting to settle. I'm upright, like almost like a snake, aware but calm. And I'm letting all of these self-judgments, all of the hooks, all of the things, all of the faces, let them all just settle to the bottom. Breathing in that cool, clean, fresh air. Breathing out those toxic brown, smoky thoughts, feelings. Cycling through that one more time. Cleaning it out. Slowing down my heart rate. Rooted to the earth. Feeling connected to each other. Feeling connected to every other heart that's crying out at this moment. Feeling the wave of collective care. Feeling connected to the hundreds of thousands of people who have marched. Sending that love and connection to the people, to the Palestinian families who are suffering. Not knowing that we are here, sending them care and love. And allow yourself to receive the love and care of other bodhisattvas throughout space and time who are supporting us, encouraging us to keep our hearts open in hell. Know that you are loved. Know that you are cared for. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time to start the breakout rooms. Shall I be giving an introduction, Doreen, or will you be giving the introduction for the breakout rooms?
Oh, it's as you wish. You started, so go ahead, please, dear.
Okay. So the idea is that we go into groups of with 3 people, and it's basically feel free to share whatever you like within this group. But we have 3 suggestions, sort of which you can, which perhaps resonates. I will also share them in the chat, but it's basically there are 3. Let's start with the first one. The first one is what moved you. Then where do you notice silence within your community? And last one, what helps to break silence with clarity and compassion? So these are just words you can take along and decide for yourself whether you want to dive in this or some other thing or share whatever you like. We will start the breakout rooms and we will come back within 10 minutes.
Welcome back. And I first want to give the floor to Linda. Linda, yes. I'm looking for you. Can you find the unmute? Yes.
Yeah. You know, you're doing that because I put in the chat that I wished to have a little further exchange of what we started with Eric, because actually something needed to be clarified. But the not allowing anybody to unmute without a specific recognition made that impossible. So and so I'm just, and I just now put another little, why not be a little freer in the, and as I said in my chat just now, probably no one will behave badly, but so I feel that some of these could become a bit of a conversation. And if that conversation goes on for 1 or 2 minutes, that's not bad. That's good. So on that particular point, I had asked Eric about who are could we look further into who are the people who are allowing, say, the forces of money or donors or something like that to silence them. And you said that you couldn't out people who spoke to you in confidence, which is not what I meant to suggest. And I just spoke with Petra Amsterdam in our little group about more about this. What I meant to suggest was that all of us who are connected with Dharma groups and Dharma teachers, I'm connected with a bunch of them, even though I have my principal one. Why not ask these questions ourselves? Why not? I just said to Petra, I named a prominent Zen teacher who I have known for many years, I said, why don't I speak to him? Okay, Norman Fisher, right? Why don't I speak to Norman and say, could we have a discussion in Everyday Zen Sangha about Palestine? Could we? Could I come in and join that discussion? Could I even facilitate it or help facilitate it? And then see what he says. What happens? If it's yes, then okay, something's been opened. If it's no, then why not? I was suggesting we could be proactive in that regard. Yeah. ... So many things we could say. Okay, I'll say one more thing because I'm afraid of being of not being able to say anymore. Just one more thing. Some of you know that I had an article in the Lion's Roar that was very passionate and very outspoken and was much more so than anything that they had ever published before. And I just want you to know that I've gotten so many responses from Buddhists who have said, thank you. You've said what I wanted to say. I didn't know how to say it. So maybe we could open the door to a teeny bit more optimism about Buddhists, right? And maybe we should share good news about Buddhists who want to speak more about this and kind of water those grasses that are sprouting up. Okay, you can mute me again. I'll mute myself.
Okay.
We will, I don't know if I could put it in the chat right now, but your article needs to be shared with everyone online here, whether in the chat right now or
We will.
after. And also, Mary Thanasara has a few articles also that are very powerful. So let's honor those voices.
We will add it to the newsletter. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I believe the unmute history is off. So everyone who wants to speak, thank you for the suggestion, Linda. Welcome so we leave the raise hand, we leave the formalities. Let's be authentic and spontaneous. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to Linda's suggestion, and you know, I think where my understanding of your original question took me is like, what then when they say no? And so I think the question that came up for me, Linda, and Eric and I did that a little bit in our response to Eve, is do we name them publicly when they say no? You know, is that the skillful next step, or is it not the skillful next step? Do we go to that level? Is that skillful, or is that not Buddhist anymore? You know, that's where the Buddhism starts to confuse me. Like, you know, is it so extreme in Gaza that we're willing to actually name people who we have approached kindly and gently? You know, so I guess that's my question: is what's next? Do we push harder?
Can I give my response an idea about that?
Yeah, yeah.
I would turn the question around and imagine that you and I have had this discussion, and I would be that person who said no, and you were the person pressing for me saying yes. And sorry for imposing as a teacher because I'm not, but just for the example. Now, how would you respond if I put our conversation online? If I would say I had Alexandra Kane asking me this, I said no, and she pressed like this, and these were her arguments. What would you feel about that in public?
As long as you represented my arguments, I'd be proud of myself. But you know, I mean,
that's interesting. I think maybe the man you're referring to might be proud that you refer to his conversation because it's in a way an honoring of his position.
Yeah.
And that means that others can make up their own minds.
Yeah.
I would not be so, because the other way around would mean that we are agreeing on the line of silencing. And I thought this whole discussion was all about undoing silencing. So I would say, as you said, with this condition, if the argument is well regarded, you might even let him check it. Did I quote you well here? That's my idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a question, it's a really complex question around skillful means, right? And about consent and about, right? Like if it's difficult, right? I mean, it gets into outing people and really it could get really sticky and really messy and we have to make sure that it's not mean-spirited, but still, like, you know, like Alexandra and I wrote in response to an article, to a blog post, you know, and this is you know, for me, it was I had to make that decision. Like, it was a violation of that relationship in some ways, but you know, you have to intimately navigate that for yourselves and for your moment to moment, and where's the tipping point. And you know, there was initially a response to something I said that she picked up on. So then it was a conversation going on in public, really. So, but I think it broke open the conversation, and what was said needed to be said outside of rank and authority, um, and that was really hard for me. But in the end, we have to do what our hearts tell us to do. It's not easy. I appreciate Tom. I appreciate your, because
May I add an argument here that comes to my heart now?
yes,
In another association, I'm responsible for a project that we call social safety. It's all about people annoying each other up until the very worst that you can think of. And one thing I learned there is that in the association, a lot of things have been hidden because of lack of transparency, including the fact that some members have been expelled from the association because of acts they had done, and that was not even mentioned. So it was only a matter of rumors.
Mm.
The process of creating more social safety for people needs transparency. Otherwise, we stick in the rumors, and then we are like, well, in what we have heard so many times, we don't know, and we heard some rumors, but probably it's not true. No, it has to get out in the truth. And I have consulted our board president to say, you do not need to mention their names of the people you've expelled, but you can mention that 2 members in last year have been expelled for such and such reason, so that everyone knows what is going on. Otherwise, nothing will ever change. This thought came up in association with this whole thing about, I think that communication is not such a bad thing, and speaking truth is not a bad thing. And if there is more on stake than just someone who says, I am affronted by the very fact that you published what I said. Come on. What are we talking about? How much of a burden is that? And like I said in the conversation with Alexandra, you can even ask them for their permission. And they might then think in words of themselves, what did I even say? Am I willing to stand behind these words? I think that is the power of words that we have. We should not let it out and forget about it.
I would also add that there's also a threshold in this regard. I mean, are we talking about people, for example, teachers who are totally denying what's going on, or are we talking about teachers who are not speaking out, for example? I mean, there is a difference there, and also I think how you would approach this difference differently.
Yeah, well, a very small thing I want to add, because I think this is really interesting, because it sounds like we are caught up in the circle. So we have to break through if we want to change something. And I think that is ethically right now. Yeah. Rumors are not good speaking, how you say, not right speech anyhow. So this is festering. It has to break open, and perhaps naming people and say, well, we asked kindly there. They said no, because there are a lot of no's. And I asked Barry, Massachusetts, that's the institute as well. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. I think this is really inspiring.
I think it's also important to, I know certainly Bhikkhu Bodhi, I know Laura Hassler, who submitted articles to the two magazines we have here, and they were not published. So we're keeping a record of the articles and who's denying publishing them. Laura lives there in Holland. Her father is responsible for bringing Thich Nhat Hanh to America in the 60s. And she spent a lot of time with Thich Nhat Hanh and Sister Chan Khong. And she wrote an article that Gaza is today's Vietnam. And it was it was a beautifully written statement, and they refused to publish it. And it's not like she's just anyone. She spent the war years with them.
You mean Tricycle or Lions Roar?
Yeah, both of them.
Okay.
We submitted to both of them.
Mhm.
So there's record. I have to say that during the Rohingya genocide, I put on a panel discussion at Union Theological Seminary, co-sponsored by two Buddhist groups, right? And we called it the Rohingya genocide. I don't think I could do that today in this. And it's interesting because one of my co-partners in that project wrote some articles. And I just wanted to read some of the titles of the articles to you and see, right? She wrote, we must address religious nationalism to prevent Buddhism from being perverted into a force of evil, right? Like I could never write, we must address Zionist nationalism to prevent Buddhism from being perverted into a force of evil. She wrote, the colonial roots of Myanmar's rage against the Rohingya. And we can't write the article, the colonial roots of Israel's rage against the Palestinians. She wrote, Burmese expats must join the chorus of international outrage over the Rohingya humanitarian crisis. We can't write that article. American Buddhists must join the chorus of international outrage over the Palestinian genocide. She wrote, Myanmar's myriad challenges don't excuse toxic and unfounded racism against the Rohingya. We can't write the article, Jewish historical trauma does not excuse the toxic and unfounded racism against the Palestinians. She wrote, how will I explain extremist Buddhism to my children? We can't write, how will I explain the silence of the Buddhist community during the genocide to my children? It's just a different set of rules.
So can I ask, why can you not write those titles, you think, Eric?
Well, who's going to publish those?
Okay.
No one will publish.
I do believe we can say most of those things. I'd like to see that article you were reading out from Eric. I believe we can and say it. There is a difference, though, because it was Buddhists in Burma that were doing the genocide. So that made it more harder to silence that in Buddhist groups. But anyway, I still think we can say those things.
Oh, thank you.
Are these not articles that could perhaps be published internationally? Obviously, America is facing all sorts of its own problems, and not necessarily Buddhist publications, but news publications. The things that you're saying are said freely in Ireland. And you could print any of the things that you just said in an Irish newspaper. You could speak on the television about these things and everyone would agree with you. maybe not everyone, but 99% of the population. I sometimes wonder if part of our problem, maybe as Buddhists, is we're politely waiting for our leaders to take the right action, and we're waiting for permission to speak up. And I think we have to be the leaders that we want to see. We have to speak up. We have to, as you just said, make that request for the conversation, and not to someone who will say no, but in a group. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about not talking about it.
Mm.
And we need to join together and be the leaders, because the people at the beginning, the trailblazers, always face the difficulty. That's the hard path, the hard trail to cut through, and
Yeah.
people will follow. We're all here because we're just looking for that direction. We're just looking for that community. And I feel certain people will join us.
Wow,
And
Karen.
maybe some leaders and teachers won't say yes, won't speak to us, but I think that they will come to us. That I wrote down at one point, there's a difference between holding someone's feet to the fire and going and putting out the fire. And when we're putting out the fire, people will join us in putting out the fire.
Mm.
But that distraction about language, if somebody stopped me as I'm on my way to my neighbor's fire with my bucket of water and goes, "Are you sure you should be doing that? You know, they're the wrong sort of people." Or if somebody says, "Are you sure that's really a fire? Is it really a fire?" You know, I just need to ignore that obstacle and put out the fire.
Yay, Karen, thank you.
Go, Karen. Everything
Yeah,
Karen just said. In the
Yeah,
transcript, I want it credited to me what Karen just said.
I'm very much with you with what you're saying. Yeah, and I remember when we were at the conference with His Holiness the Dalai Lama quite some time ago about giving legitimacy through the full ordination for Buddhist nuns. After 20 years of scholarship, after overturning every stone, nothing was found to block that other than irrationality.
Mm.
And it was blocked even at the end of the conference by the invisible weight of those that hold, down the patriarchy. And with the nuns walking out the door, one of them said, "We're just going to have to take this ourselves."
Mm.
And I feel that that's the moment. I'm not expecting the dial to move much on the Buddhist world. I don't feel the heartbreak I've been through. It's like I just feel clear that we need to refashion our Dharma that can meet this moment and use our energy to do that rather than knocking on the door that will be forever closed.
And thank you for the beautiful articles that you've written. So powerful. You've been one of the lighthouses, one of the important lighthouses in this moment in time. Like I truly feel that a Zen teacher, I was in a conversation yesterday with a Zen teacher that I really love. And he said, "Eric, why are you beating up on these 80-year-olds?" And it's like, well, if it were about pronouns or something, they can't get with it, that would be one thing. But this is genocide, right? And like I've been like, I don't know if you've felt it by my expressions over the last 19 months, but I'm pretty done with this generation. I mean, the teachers, when they couldn't stand up, as the numbers went from 10,000 to 20,000 to 30,000 to 40,000 to now over 50,000, So like Karen's, like you and Karen have just confirmed, just like it's time to say, like I was corrected and I retracted a little bit from yesterday's conversation around it's time for you to go, and he said, just say, thank you for taking it as far as you could take it. And I'm really disappointed that you couldn't meet this moment. To me, this moment is the Japanese Zen priests in World War II right? This is the failure moment. This is the utter failure moment. And so so here I am swirling around with my disappointment, which is expressed in rage sometimes, but like Bodhidharma, like Emperor Wu, like what is the merit? If you can't like meet this, if you can't meet this, what is the value of all your entire effort, right? And Bodhidharma said none whatsoever. But I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. But what is true, what Karen said, is that it's time for us to, mom and dad are gone and they're not coming back. We have to stop asking them and just do it ourselves. And that there's a lot to that. Right? This is the 21st century now. We have to examine structures and systems, and we have to reorganize. We have mentors. We have historical moments. We have Ambedkar, right? Of saying, like, I'm going to do this Buddhism my way. I'm going to convert to Buddhism, but I'm not going to do it that way. This is for us to figure out as a liberation theology for my people. And I think that's the moment where we're at, right? We have to take this Buddhism because they dropped the ball and they're not coming back around to pick it up. And we have to stop asking them to. So it's an exciting moment. It's a heartbreak moment, but it's an exciting moment to say, here's our opportunity to do this. It's interesting because there was actually a Dutch filmmaker who did a beautiful little documentary on Charlotte Joko Beck. And I saw it years ago, but something she said in it stuck with me. She said, we practice. So when a crisis arises, we know what to do. And this is the crisis. And people don't know what to do. And so for you guys, you're going to have a series of speakers, guest speakers, right? I think right here you have you have at least, 5 or 6 future guest speakers on screen right now. But you could take it in parts, right? You could take it and just, look at the mechanisms and address them in their containers, really, and really strategize around this. Like what I wanted to do today was to just show up with heart around the suffering of Buddhists who are being silenced, not only around the silence, but there's a lot to talk about. And there's a lot of future guests too, and really connecting it to the Dharma, I think is crucial, right? So, I mean, we could talk about deconstructing Zionism. That's its own talk, right? Or the history. We dig deep into the history, and wrong understanding and wrong view leads to unskillful actions, right? That's the whole history going on there. So there's a lot you can unpack, but it's going to take several visits.
Yeah.
But Karen, I turn to the Irish around this a lot, and they've had such powerful voices. And I think it's partly, right? They've lived under occupation for 600 years, right? And tough as nails, right? And the spirit can't be broken of the Irish people, right? So inspiring. And they haven't lost their sense of humor over it. And that's so important to me, right? They have their fight, but they have their spirit, I get that when I work with Native Americans. Like Lakota people have that, like you can't make them not laugh. They're beautiful people. So I just so value having you here and everything you said. But
Okay.
so what do you want to do now?
Yeah, perhaps it's time to round up, even that there is so much that can be said still. Excuse me for my bit clumsy English. I'm profoundly touched by this gathering. So a warm thank you for showing up, and a warm, heartfelt thank you to Eric. You really moved me. You really touched me. This is right in the core of what we wanted to initiate with Liberation Circle. So thank you so much. Just a few words perhaps to before we say goodbye. So there will be a recording published in a few days, and we aim to show up with a live gathering monthly, and we would really appreciate it to spread the word because it's important. We we hit into the importance of speaking out. So the more people, the better. And well, that's it. I have nothing more to add to this. Perhaps some inspiring words at the end, or a little, I don't know, goodbye meditation, or perhaps Joyce or Dirk still have to say, want to say something.
No, I'm waiting for Eric's closing prayer, as he called it.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you all very much for joining, and it's great to start with you all yeah, that we can start like this together. And it's personally, I just want to say it's also for regaining some trust in humankind, and it's I just want to say thank you for that. Sure.
Okay, so I thought about how to close today, and I was thumbing through my past writings, and I came upon I had transcribed Joanna Macy's offering of the Shambhala warrior prophecy. And I just read through it really quickly, and I thought, wow, Joanna Macy is one person who's never let me down. I just think she's wonderful. So I thought I would just quickly read it in a prayer meditation kind of way, and that we all could leave with that in our hearts. So I'll just read it, and it'll be our closing prayer. There comes a time when all of life on earth is in danger. At that time, great powers have arisen, barbarian powers. And although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. And what these barbarian powers have in common are the weapons of unimaginable devastation and death, and the technologies that lay waste the world. And it is just at this point in our history when the future of all beings seem to hang by the frailest of threads that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now, you can't go there because it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala warrior by looking at her or him because they wear no uniforms, no insignia, They wield no banners. They have no barricades upon to climb or threaten the enemy, and behind which they can rest and regroup. They don't even have a home turf. The Shambhala warriors only have the terrain of the barbarian powers to move across, to act upon. Now the time is coming when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors, moral courage and physical courage. And that is because they are going right into the heart of the barbarian powers to dismantle their weapons. They're going to go into the pits and citadels where the weapons are made and deployed. They're going to go into the corridors of power where the decisions are made to dismantle the weapons in every sense of the word. Now mark this. The Shambhala warriors know that these weapons can be dismantled because they are mind-made, made by the human mind. They can be unmade by the human mind because the dangers that have brought down upon us have not been made by some satanic deity or by some evil extraterrestrial force or some unchangeable preordained fate. These arise out of our relationships and habits, out of our priorities. So now is the time the Shambhala warriors go into training, and they train in the use of two implements. One is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. You need both. You need the compassion because it provides the fuel to move you out of where you were. You need to do what you need to do. And that means not being afraid of the suffering of our world. And when you are not afraid to be with the pain, then nothing can stop you. You can be and do what you are meant to do. But by itself, that implement can be hot and it can burn you out. So you need the other, that other tool, the insight into the radical interconnectivity at the heart of existence, the web of life, our deep ecology. When you have that, then you understand that, then you know that is not the battle between good guys and bad guys. You know that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And you know that we are so interwoven into the web of life that even the smallest act with clear intentions has repercussions throughout the whole web beyond your capacity to see. But that's kind of cool. So maybe even a little abstract. So you need the heat of compassion. So we dance the interplay between compassion and wisdom, which is there for each one of us to embody in our own way. And I'll close with, I recognize that I am not separate from all that is. I will not lead a harmful life, nor encourage others to do so. I will live in harmony with all of life and the environment that sustains it.